of the performance variation among countries. Look how the world looked in the year 2000. The first thing you see is the bubble was a lot smaller. You know, the bubbles were all smaller. Education was a lot cheaper in the year 2000. So it has become a lot more expensive. Did education also become better? Let's have a look at some examples. One example is Korea. Korea in the year 2000 was there, now Korea is here. This was an education system that was really doing well in the year 2000, but said to itself, we're not satisfied. We want to become better. We want to focus on excellence. If you look at Chile, in the year 2000, Chile had very low performance. Now, Chile is there. Improving education outcomes very significantly, and at the same time improving equity in the education system, reducing the socioeconomic gap. Chile is not doing well, it is doing a lot better. If you look at Poland in Europe, 2000, 2009. If you look at Portugal, 2000, 2009. Hungary, Germany, you see some countries really moving ahead. At the top end, at the bottom of the spectrum. The world in which we live, the education world, is really changing. In 10 years' time, you can change the world. And of course, there are other countries as well. I'm missing out here. Peru, Indonesia, Latvia, Israel, Brazil. These are all countries with rapid improvements in reading. That's what I showed you here. Mexico is among the countries with rapid improvement in mathematics. Brazil is there too. Turkey, Greece, Portugal, Italy, Germany, and so on. And I think these are all very important examples. In South America, probably the most impressive improver is Brazil. They have succeeded in getting more people into school, and have at the same time, as you can see here, improved the quality of learning outcomes. They're still not doing well, but they're on the right track, like Mexico is as well. I think it's a question of accelerating the pace of progress to move forward. So we live in a changing world. I want to just illustrate one point, and that's the proportion of people that fall below what I call level 2. And you will hear me talk about level 2 several times during the presentation. And the reason I do this is because we have good evidence that people who do not master level 2 are very severely penalized in today's societies, economically, but also socially. They have, for example, in reading, learned to read. They can technically read, but they're not able to use reading for learning. And you can see in Mexico that proportion is still very, very large. You talk about half of the people at age 15 in the field of mathematics, which is the field where Mexico is improved, basically still do not master the basic levels of competence. The good thing is that in 2003 things were a lot worse. The yellow dot shows you how the picture was in 2003. So Mexico is on the right way, but the challenge is massive. Is it worth to do that? One thing you can do is, you can imagine, what if Mexico would succeed in educating everybody so that at least they reach their level 2? At least you eliminate what is really poor performance. And you can say that the long-term economic benefits of achieving this are huge. In the case of Mexico, we talk about $25,000 billion of lost economic outcome over the lifetime of today's student population because they don't master level 2. This is a lot of money, 25 trillion US dollars lost in economic outcome because of poor performance. This is many times as much as what would be needed to address the problem. And you can see that in many educational areas that the cost of action is often much smaller than the cost of inaction. You can see that in the same way for individuals. I'll talk about this in a moment. But international comparisons are controversial. Again, is it fair? Is it valid? So let's take another perspective. Let's compare Mexican schools with what Mexican schools show is possible to achieve. This chart shows you social background, and performance. And I can now map every school into this diagram. The larger dots are the larger schools, the smaller dots are the smaller schools, the green dots, the private schools, white dots, the public schools, the brown dots, the public schools in disadvantaged urban areas. So what you see? The first thing you see is that as you move to more wealthier families and schools, performance is better. In Mexico, performance depends on the social context. That's something we knew before. But I think more interesting is that there's a lot of variability. Look at the disadvantaged schools in Mexico. These are schools that are actually very poor in terms of the socioeconomic index. But what you can see is that some of those disadvantaged schools, and even some of the rural disadvantaged schools, do really well. They do better than the OECD average. And others do really poorly. So, social disadvantage is a challenge, but some schools are really good at addressing it. Some schools in Mexico show that you can actually address social disadvantage. A lot of variability in schools. And you can see the same thing in the rich schools. Some people believe, if you live in a wealthy area, you probably have a good school. True for some, not true for everybody. Very, very important. And what you can actually say is if Mexico would succeed to move every school up to its best performer in the same class of social background, Mexico would be today one of the countries in the OECD average, not 50 years in the future, today. If all schools would achieve what every school show is possible to achieve in the Mexican context. And now you can ask me, well, is that possible? How do you deal with that kind of variability in performance? And I want to talk about one example. If you remember the top performing countries, Shanghai and China, they have exactly done that. They have said to themselves, if in every class of the school we make the worst performing school as good as the best performing school. How did they do that? They tried to attract the best principals in the most challenging schools and the best teachers into the most challenging classrooms. They didn't force people to do that. And people think China, authoritarian, they just tell people what to do. No, they didn't do that. They created incentives for people to advance their careers by taking on challenges. In the country where my children go to school, in France, you know what happens? The longer you are in service in school, the more choice you have where you want to work. So what do the experienced teachers do? They go to the school where they have the easiest life, in the privileged areas. And who goes to the challenging schools? The teachers who just come from university. In Shanghai, they reversed the teacher. They actually turned this around. And listen to how they did that.
那么如何来改变这种现状呢？我们就想到了，是不是能够把一些好的学校以相对困难的学校切成办学联合体呢？这个建议得到了我们教育行政部门，当然也得到了社区的广泛的认同与支持。于是我们就开展了这项工作。那么这项工作是怎么来做的呢？从政府来说，我们出台了相应的政策，就是鼓励与支持办学相对好的学校与相对困难的学校结成对子。第二呢，我们好的学校与相对困难的学校结成对子呢，我们要签订一个合作办学的协议。这个合作办学协议里面呢，就是明确了各自的责任、权利与义务。
Wanted to show you here is this is not about culture or something very foreign. This is about public policy. This is about an idea where you help every school to learn from other schools, every teacher to learn from other teachers, to create an environment in which the education profession progresses. Just as an example. But I also want to point out one more thing, and that is social disadvantage is not destined.